Welcome to the Get Out There and Get Known podcast. Join Pam Perry, veteran PR strategist, Emmy award-winning producer and publisher of Speakers Magazine, who will show you how to crack the code in getting out there to get known. Each week, she either interviews her media friends, PR colleagues, or she just goes solo, offering you strategies on publicity, publishing, and platform building. So listen up to hear how to get booked on media places and on superstar stages. Now, here's your host, Pam Perry.
Hey, this is Pam Perry. Thank you for joining us today for Get Out There and Get Known podcast. Today is one of those Women Crush Wednesday days. I have one of my media friends, Yanick Ricelam, who I just love and adore. She is going to be coming forward, but let me tell you a little bit about her and you can see why I just adore her. She is like the real deal. So Yanick Ricelam's mission is to give voice to the voiceless and to share the gift of knowledge through her written word. She is excellent at that. She's an award-winning journalist, author, educator, and speaker. She shares her expertise at Howard University. I guess they say HUUU, where she is a professor and former chair of the Department of Media, Journalism, and Film. She's an MMJ, and she'll explain to you what that MMJ is. That's a whole new term, right? She teaches multimedia reporting, interactive editing, and magazine publishing, which she is so good at. We were talking before we got started about our magazine fetishes that we have. We love magazine publishing. She also is an advisor, to 101 Magazine, the Howard University News Service, and Truth Be Told .news, a fact-checking site created under the Challenge Fund for Innovation in Journalism and Education, administered by the Online News Association, which is very important. Her research, she loves research, focuses on health as well as the impact of social media and technology, entrepreneurship, media management, and diversity in hiring, promotion, and coverage. It has been published in the Journal of Magazine and New Media Research, Asian Pacific Media Educator, Fight the Power, the Spike Lee Reader, and Social Media here we go. Social Media Pedagogy, okay, and Practice. I've got to get my things together in terms of understanding what that is. She also received an Industry Research Award from the Association for Education in Journalism and Mass Communications for her research. Again, that's one of the key things on tablet use by newspapers and magazines. She is, you can go to Yanick Ricelam to read about her and to also book her to speak. But she was also too at the at Heart and Soul, where she served as editor-in-chief, editorial director, associate publisher, and vice president, successfully launching the health magazine under 3 owners. And she was also the founding editor of BET Weekend. I used to get that in my weekend newspaper bundle. Her editorial vision led the magazine becoming the second largest Black publication, growing nearly 40% from 800,000 to 1.3 million in just 3 years. She spent a decade at the New York Times as an assistant style editor, deputy home and living editor, assistant editor at Connecticut Weekly, metropolitan copy editor, and she's done a lot of things also at the Atlanta Constitution and Journal, Toledo Braid. Oh, you were kind of near us. Toledo Braid as Blade as the editor-in-chief at Essence and contributing editor at Emerge. Oh, I miss Emerge. Her clients, she's had included in so many different magazines: BET, Essence, Heart and Soul, Afro-American Newspaper, and go on and so. So one of the things that she's doing right now, she's in a PhD program. And as if that isn't enough, right? She's challenged herself some more. So I'm going to bring up Yanick Ricelam. Hey! Welcome.
Thank you. So great to see you.
It is so good to see you too, because one of the things is like, how much can you reinvent yourself and grow higher and higher and higher? So it's like, let's start at the beginning of where this all started, this love for words, your love for words, and really challenging things with the words as well. Like not just words, but also it's been really deliberate in the African-American community. So kind of give us a little bit of the backstory of
Well, I
that.
think my love for words started in my family. I grew up in Akron, Ohio, and my mother used to tell me stories about my grandfather writing political articles in Haiti. And then I used to read the newspaper with my grandfather, my paternal grandfather. And there was a children's corner page in our newspaper, the Akron Beacon Journal. So I read a lot as a child. I would write, I did poetry, I wrote short stories. And then between reading the newspaper with my grandfather and just, watching my family read the paper all the time and the stories I was hearing from my mother. And then later, as I got older, I realized my father was contributing to a small Black weekly in Ohio called The Umpire. So, and he taught, he was also a professor. He taught at Albany State University. So modern languages and English. So in fact, he was allegedly retired, but I had to turn in his grades while planning his funeral.
Wow.
So I think it came from me from several different sources.
So Yanick, just really think about the timing of that. So your grandfather, what period of time was he doing that? What the 30s, the 40s?
My grandfather was writing. That was probably, I'm thinking it was probably somewhere between the 30s and 50s.
That's
and
amazing.
I never did pin down an exact time period, and she's no longer here. And the grandfather I was reading the paper with, that would have been in the 60s.
Okay. And then your father graduated from college and he's teaching as a professor.
Yes. So he was going, when I was very little, he was in school before my parents divorced. So he moved to Akron after one of my uncles did. He moved from the South to work in the rubber factories because they were kind of like Detroit, where you are, the automotive industry in the Rust Belt. So then my father transferred from Xavier to University of Akron, and then he got his master's at Kent State University. So I remember him studying a lot as a very young child. Oh, what year did he get that? I would say in the mid 60s, he got his master's.
Before the Voting Rights Act and all of that, right?
Yeah, right around that time.
So can you imagine? Okay, so you teach at Howard, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, we had HBCUs because at a certain point in time, they weren't letting us go to different schools or whatever. And Kent State is not a HBCU.
Yeah, so that was a pretty big deal for him to go to University of Akron and Kent State. And then he went down to teach at Albany State after that. So he started teaching at HBCU. And his students loved him. There were like really wonderful stories that when I would go down there, I would hear from people directly. And then especially, at his funeral, of course, there were a lot of tributes and things like that. So I'm really proud of the work he did.
Amazing. Yes, he sounds amazing.
And he was an associate member of NABJ as well.
Are you serious? Oh
yeah, because of the little, the writing that he did in the weekly a long time ago, and he loved going to the NABJ conferences and telling all the. I'd run into somebody, they say, "I know all your business." I said, "You must have been talking to my father." My father, my mother, they would just go off and meet all kinds of people, and that he loved going. So the year that he passed, when they did the tribute reel of people who passed that year, they included him on that. So,
wow!
So that was really.
So nice. You really got this. You got this naturally. This was something
I got this naturally. And then the health journalism part, my mother was a nurse and my sister is a nurse.
Okay.
So I was always hearing about health stories and seeing my mother work in the community. She was a visiting nurse for a while and people were always asking her questions. And she was really passionate about health and helping people and helping them heal. And so just kind of, learning things through her and seeing the work that she did. And then on my sister too, and they were at opposite ends. My mother really loved geriatric nursing and my sister was a neonatal intensive care nurse. So they had the beginning of life and the end of life. But sometimes they'd have some kind of dinner time conversations. You say, okay, that's enough of that. Mother said, "Oh yes, you're the one with the weak stomach."
Yeah, because neonat that is at the beginning and the end. Geriatrics medicine. I just realized, I guess maybe because I'm older, what that whole thing was. I didn't realize what geriatric medicine that was a field until I really took my parents, who were elder. They were going to a regular doctor, and then someone says you need to send them to geriatric doctor. I'm like, what is that? And it made such a big difference. It really did. They passed really now, but it was such a big difference. I was like, wow, I didn't know this was a thing. So anyone who doesn't know, geriatric medicine is like the senior, I guess you say senior citizen kind of medicine, where they're handling the elder care kind of a thing. And so what is your what are you pursuing right now as your PhD? Because this is a good combination of everything that you've ever done, as if you don't already teach and over a whole lot of stuff. So
yeah, I'm trying to narrow it down a little. I'm studying medical sociology at Howard University, and I'm kind of specializing in studying medical sociology and social inequality. So I'm specializing in health disparities and environmental health.
yes.
So one of the projects I'm working on, I'm looking for my dissertation and for a journalism project as well. I'm looking at the impact of the rubber industry on health in the Akron, Ohio area. And so I have a series that's running in the Center for Public Integrity and also in Belt magazine, which covers the Rust Belt. And then my dissertation is kind of on a related topic, also looking at that impact. So,
wow.
So I'm very, have a growing interest in climate change and all the things that all these factories have done, industry period, across the country and around the world and stuff.
Anything with Detroit, because Detroit has a lot of.
Yeah, I've been looking at Detroit too. So there's some other larger projects I may do down the road. But I'm, while I'm focusing on Akron, I'm looking at some other things: Pittsburgh, Detroit, Louisiana, Texas, everywhere. So many Black communities. So there's a lot of toxic cities everywhere. And the thing is too is that the people don't always think about is, even though the industry may leave or it may be a shell of its former self, the impact is still there. So we only have Firestone here left in Akron. Akron was the former rubber capital of the world, and you had the cars in Detroit and some steel, and then the tires in Akron. But that has a lasting impact on the people who worked in the factories and their families and people in the community from the air, soil, and water pollution.
It's just toxicity. It's just toxic. I mean, just the whole thing is just, you don't know it. I mean, people coming from the South, coming to the North, didn't realize the impact of that. And so it takes journalists like you explain to what an MMJ is, because I kind of did that at the beginning. It's like, that's a thing.
Yeah, it's a multimedia journalist. So
explain to people what that is that may not know what an MMJ is.
It's basically kind of learning more digital tools and audio and visual tools in addition to writing and text. And so a lot of the broadcast journalism majors we're graduating are MMJs, where they may do things for the website and a TV station. But you also have some who are working, say, in newspapers, who may be digital and doing a lot of different things. I mean, at this point, we try to encourage people to be flexible and to learn a lot of different tools. And in order to practice what we preach, we're learning all those tools too. So I just finished a 2-week high school journalism workshop through the Dow Jones News Fund. I co-directed with another professor. So we were teaching them how to cover health journalism, but also how to use some of these tools. And for their closing ceremony, they learned how to use something called Story Map. And they wanted to do that to kind of introduce themselves, since we were on Zoom. So they plotted, in the cities where they're based. And as they each kind of took their turn, the map would show where they were from, and then it would pop up a photo or a video that they worked on and a mini description of their project. So they would explain that and what they got out the program and go on to the next person.
Wow.
So it was really nice to see them use that tool that they had just learned, days earlier.
And this was high school.
This was high school. I wish I had some of the exposure they had. Right. So these are like 9th through 12th graders and a couple people who are going to be in their first year at college. And it was really great because we opened the first day, the CEO of Howard University Hospital spoke to them. And on the last day, the president of Howard University spoke to them.
That's a big deal. They don't realize it at this point, but they'll realize it later. That's a big deal.
Yeah, I think some of them are getting, plus their parents were really excited. And they had a lot of different speakers throughout the week, medical experts, as well as journalists in different fields, different ages, different backgrounds. They learned about the legacy of the Black press, as well as, every aspect, whether it was broadcast or print or other digital areas. So they learned quite a bit. I wish I had a program like that when I was their age.
Yes. And when you talk about the history of the legacy of the Black press, the first kind of like broadcast, you think about Kathy Hughes, which it's a Howard University. Is it Kathy Hughes?
It's a Kathy Hughes School of Communications.
Yes.
So the program was named after her.
That was her. And then you've got, I think it's the Afro-American, which is in the area. It's not in DC, but it's in Baltimore.
It's in Baltimore. They have a branch in Washington, and we have the Washington Informer as well. Yes. And so there's a lot of different, the history is really rich in that area.
It is. It is. And I realized Bishop Vashti McKenzie, I think it was her grandfather that started the one in Baltimore.
The Afro.
And she actually was in communications herself.
Yeah, she was. And the Afro, at one time they had a paper in Richmond, Virginia, then Washington, D.C. and Baltimore.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and they were, doing things nationally, and so was the Pittsburgh Courier. Those were some of the leading Black newspapers where they were covering things all over the country. They would send their correspondence all over the place. I had there was a woman named Evelyn Cunningham. She was known as the lynching editor of the Pittsburgh Courier. I met her while I was in New York. So it was really fascinating talking to her about all the things that she covered. Malcolm X, she covered Martin Luther King, she covered lynching, she wanted to be, cover all those stories, but she was everywhere.
Think about it, a woman during that time.
Exactly.
Most women
in her 90s.
Yeah, because most women during that time were either a housewife, maybe a nurse, things like that. Exactly. And so she's out there covering lynching.
Lynching. She was all through the South covering those. She, right after bombings and all kind of things.
That had to be unsafe. She probably had some threats at some point. I'm thinking
she did have some threats, but I guess she thought that she would be safer for her than some of the men because they would kind of overlook her in a sense. Yeah. But she was tall and striking. There was no way you could really miss her, and she could be really in your face. But she was always very strategic too. She was wonderful. I really enjoyed talking to her and interviewing her. But just the work that she did. She was also she received a legacy award from NABJ, and she's won some other major awards for her and for the Courier. But it's just really fascinating to see some of the work that our pioneers did, who paved the way for us.
And not only that, but when you talked about you wish what we could have had in high school, right, when we were graduated from high school, or even like journalism when we were in college, they have to learn everything. And this really became clear to me when a friend of mine, Vicki Thomas, who was a career journalist in radio, and she's in Michigan Broadcasters Hall of Fame. She's a former president of NABJ here in Detroit. And old school, you just do your radio and you get it. But then as time goes on, there's more and more tools that now they have to do blogs. They've got to do the podcast. They've got to do the editing right here on the spot. I mean, they are MMJs.
And they have to do the social media.
And the social media.
Yeah, so they have to update it, throughout this 24/7. So they may start out with a breaking news alert and a tweet or something, and then they have to keep updating their story, whatever they're doing.
Yes.
So it's an entirely different cycle.
It's entirely. And so when you think about someone who started just having to do one thing and they have to keep changing, there's some people that can change with that. And then there's some that just like, this is just way too much. I didn't sign up for this. I didn't sign up to be, I signed up for radio, or even like the newspaper reporters. It's like, I signed up to do this. Now I have to keep up with the blog, keep up with my social media. Talk about journalists in terms of how much journalists get pitched and the amount of things that they have to keep up with in a day, besides doing their deadlines, but they're on Twitter. They got to respond to DM. I mean, so people are upset maybe that someone doesn't respond to them, but give them a scenario of what they're probably dealing with day to day.
Well, it's a lot. I mean, it always was a lot before everything expanded. So if you think about that, people are sending them DMs or direct messages in Twitter. They may be following them on Instagram and Facebook. They're calling them. They might be using snail mail and sending them something. Probably not faxing as much, but most of it is email. So, so email and social media, that's the main thing they're doing it. So, and they have to keep up with things on their own. So they have their own sources they're checking with, in addition to all this information is coming to them from all different directions. Then their editors and producers are bringing information to them as well. So it's like you have people pitching you, and then you have listeners, viewers, and readers who are sending you information, or what about this, what about that? And it's just a lot. And then you have to keep up with it. You have to keep up with different developments that are going on and things that shift in the news. And you have to try to be first. And if you're not first, you have to be different. You have to bring some new information to it. So it's not enough to tell people. You're not always telling something to people first. You may have to update it and give them added value to whatever you're telling them, because they already know. It was just like in one of my classes today, we were talking about that. And I said, you just can't say DMX died, because everybody knows that he did. They knew he was in the hospital already. So you have to take it in another direction. So what does he mean to college students? Or, talk about the services, talk about his career, talk about his film career or his music career. So you have to, add new information to it, and be a little more analytical sometimes,
and make it relevant to whatever audience that
whatever audience. Yeah, and that's the other thing. There's more niche audiences, particularly some of it was more mass market before. And some newspapers and TV stations are still that way, but they also have, they may have newsletters and blogs and different shows that are targeted to certain audience. Magazines always focused that way. They always had, even if you had a number of women's magazines, each one was appealing to a different type of woman. Or each sports magazine, Slam was different than Sports Illustrated, which was different from ESPN, the magazine. So they all had a different kind of flavor that they were offering, or different segment of the audience they were going after. And you had to know how to pitch those different mediums, whether you were a journalist trying to get a story in, or whether you're a PR professional trying to, get them to do something.
Trying to get coverage. Do you find that a lot of your students, when they're graduating, that they are freelancers, or are they getting jobs in the media, or they are starting their own companies? What's kind of like the trend?
All of the above. I also teach a media entrepreneurship class every spring. So we
a media entrepreneurship class.
Yes, because at this,
if I would have had that in college, like really.
Oh, exactly. That would have been wonderful.
I couldn't even spell entrepreneurship.
They had some good, there was a pitch competition that the university had, and I had some students who placed. They won $10,000 worth of prizes. So
I love Howard. Howard is just like the place.
It was just really wonderful to see that.
I used to travel to Howard from Wayne State University to the communications conference.
I did the same thing from Ohio State.
Yes.
Yeah, I probably saw you there years back in the day.
Oh,
but we had a bus that went there every year. And one year we picked up students.
We didn't have enough to get on the bus, girl. We had about 10 people in our journalism department.
Oh no, we filled up the rest of the bus with some students from Ohio University. The bus wasn't always full because we had a small program. We had a large program, but it was a small number of African American students. But I know I went up there 3 years in a row while I was an Ohio State student. And then when I started working at the Toledo Blade, I advised the NABJ chapter at Bowling Green State University. Then I was their chaperone.
Wow.
So, but I got my first internship at Howard's Job Fair when I was a sophomore at Ohio State.
See?
So
and
that came full circle.
Yeah. Because now you're teaching there and you're over that and doing that.
And the funny thing is that one of my mentors, he was the editor of my hometown paper, but I hadn't met him. I went to school with his daughters, but I hadn't met him. I met him at Howard, and someone said, "Oh, do you know Al Fitzpatrick?" And I said, "Yeah, I go to school with his daughters." And I heard this voice say, "What are their names?" So I said their names, and then he had started, being my mentor since I was a sophomore. And then he happened to be interim chair for 1 year at Howard University after he retired from newspapers, and he's the one who hired me.
Wow. Are you serious? That is full circle.
Yeah, it is, because he tried to hire me at the Akron Beacon Journal, but there was always a freeze on hiring, or I had already made other plans. So he would continue to advise me, but I never worked for him until after he retired for that 1 year. So that was full circle, kind of going back to Howard.
So the world is so small. So you're good friends with Karen Taylor Bass, which is like my PR colleague that I love. And so we helped really launch Fierce for Black Women, which is like your project now. And also too, about a couple of weeks ago, we had Dr. Judy Foster, who is a professor, but she went to Howard. And then also Dr. Gracie Lawson Borders. Yes, over at the dean. So both of them went to high school with me. Okay.
I know it's amazing that how tiny the world is.
Yeah, the communication field especially is very, very. So one of the things I want you to talk about is Fierce for Black Women, because I just think the vision for that is amazing and it is so needed. And so kind of give us the backstory or the focus of where that is now. And then also too, the opportunity that people can really participate in terms of really getting out there and getting known, which is the name of this podcast, get out there and get known, on maybe like doing some advertising in the banners, or maybe even some sponsored posts. I don't know if you do sponsored posts or things like that, but kind of give us a little bit of background about that.
Okay, so it kind of grew out of my work in a sense with some of the health work I did, and then it being at Heart and Soul. So when I originally started working at Heart and Soul, the editor my editor was Sherry Crute. And then after we acquired the magazine from Rodale when I was at BET, she continued to be associated with Heart and Soul. So she's worked with Heart and Soul under every single owner. I've worked under 3 different owners. And so
the old
Heart. So that's So afterwards, we talked about starting something new. So we started fierceforblackwomen.com. And a lot of people kept saying, we need a Black More. We need a Black More, because More magazine targeted women over 40. And so we focus on women who are 35 and older, African-American women who are 35 and older, but we also have a lot of younger fierce women who also read come to the website. So, and we, Black women are fierce and unapologetically so. So that's why we came up with that name, fierceforblackwomen.com. So it has a health and wellness focus. So we're trying to have women, our tagline is healthy, fit, and fabulous. And we want to try to help women be physically healthy, spiritually, emotionally, financially, everything. So those are the things we're looking at. One of the stories we have coming up soon, there's a woman named Angela Johnson. She's starting something called Valor Village in Newport News, Virginia. And it's a home for vets and their families can stay there free if they're trying to resolve a situation. Her son was in the Army, and there was a legal issue on the West Coast, and she remembers how challenging that was for her. So she's trying to create a space for families so they have a place to stay for free if they're trying to help a vet who's a loved one deal with some issues in the Tidewater area. And she did a wonderful job renovating this place. She put a lot of love in it. So we have a story that's one of our next stories that we're running in Fierce.
Is there a sponsor for that? Or because I know the Ronald McDonald House charities, they do the homes for like families when their kids are.
Yeah, it's the same kind of concept. She's looking for more. She's looking for more support. It's a nonprofit, so she's definitely raising funds for that.
Good.
But I think I had the opportunity to see the place. So I was down there over the weekend, and it's absolutely gorgeous. And each floor represents a different branch of the military. And there's a Buffalo Soldier room, but has a lot of military artifacts, uniforms, pictures of people in her family. Just really, I saw a great photo they're going to put up of, I think it's her husband's grandfather, great grandfather. Wow. So it's just really, it's really touching. It's really
probably great grandfather.
And there's a great water view. You can see Norfolk on the other side of the water, out the front door and out some of the windows. But I just think it's a really great project. So, that's the other thing we try to highlight, fierce women who are doing fierce things.
Yes.
And
if you all didn't do that, who would cover that? I mean, so in order for her to get funding, she needs to have some awareness. In order to get the awareness, someone has to tell the story and tell it from you guys' lens to see the importance of that. Because if it was her great grandfather, could have been the Civil War. If it was her grandfather, probably World War II. I mean, you know what I'm saying, which is so few. And that whole people who have family members that were in the military, they understand like how important that is. So that is really, and so Fierce for Black Women, it was started by you and
Sherry Crute.
And so hers is kind of like the health bend in a way.
She has a very strong health background. I always say she could have been a doctor.
Yeah, she loves
becoming a journalist. She has a very strong health background. I learn a lot from her all the time. And that's another thing we want to do. Another one of our goals is to train more journalists to cover health, because sometimes people can scratch the surface and there's so many things we need to go deeper on. COVID-19 is a perfect example of how that affected us. We immediately tried to get a grant to start writing on some pieces about that, because as soon as we heard about it, we knew that it was going to affect us disproportionately. Just thinking about, how and where we work and the underlying conditions we have and the numbers and those kind of things. So a lot of things that we were thinking about, ended up unfortunately coming true for those things. And then, back to what, we were talking about with the environmental health piece too. So some of the research also shows that pollution places us at greater risk. If you live in places that have a history of pollution, that on top of underlying conditions, places us in a bad place. And then if you're immunocompromised, some doctors are telling people, pretend you weren't vaccinated. So there's a lot of different layers. And so it's something that we want to continue to pay attention to,
There's there's no other place really to get that type of news all in one space. And
yeah, so we're trying to, since we're juggling a lot, teaching, being in school and that kind of thing. So we're trying to build up Fierce also, so that we can bring in more people, so we can do more. We want to cover more. We want to expand. And there's, the needs are so great. And the stories are so wonderful too. The stories of our families and of our friends and, of women just in general. Black women are just so amazing.
And it's not just, and no shade on anybody that does celebrity news. It's not just celebrity news, and we're so celebrity driven. This culture, but it's really information that will change your life. It's things that you won't like you were saying, like the veterans place in Norfolk, Virginia. That's something that you won't find in, a typical tabloid type of website or blog or magazine, because it's not celebrity driven, but it's something that makes you think, something that will give the awareness, something that is going to expand the community. So the thing that I like is that Dr. Rowe, I think she has a podcast, and she's like one of your experts there. But is there opportunities for other people that may have a book that wants to that has to do with the health or the finances, the holistic things of really helping Black women be more fierce? The main thing is making them be more fierce. If they have a program, can they do like an ad or a banner or what?
Yes, if people want to advertise in Fierce, or if they want to partner in some kind of way or donate, they can contact us fierceforblackwomen@gmail.com. And the same is true if they want to be featured in an article. If they're starting a program, or if there's just someone interesting they know who should be featured in the magazine, featured on the website. We call it an online magazine.
Yeah, it's a magazine.
Old habits die hard.
Right.
But someone who wants to be featured in there, or, there's an interesting story that in your area, in your city, in your part of the world, we definitely want to hear about that.
That is so good, because one of the things is that if they want to maybe contribute in terms of writing for that as well.
Yes, if they want to write, and then also interns too. We take interns as well.
Okay, so that is good. I know if they're interning with you and Sherry, so you guys are pretty tough.
We're gonna work. They'll learn a lot. They'll have some great contacts.
Okay, I'm gonna intern with her, but she's also a professor at one of the largest communication schools. So you got to be ready.
Yeah, our graduates, Frederica Whitfield at CNN went to Howard. Isabel Wilkerson, one of the other sons, first African American to win individual Pulitzer Prize. She went to Howard. So the deputy managing editor of the LA Times went to Howard. Howard alums are everywhere.
They are. They really are.
I mean, people thought I was a bison before I became one, because I worked with so many, throughout my career. But the network is really strong, and it's, Howard is doing a lot of interesting things.
They really are. And that whole DMV area too, that you all have an impact on as well.
And HBCUs in general, there's a lot of, really interesting people that come out of HBCUs. And of course, the Vice President of the United States went to Howard.
I mean, and then also too, if she's in a sorority that is like AKA. So I saw like they had this picture of a pink and green White House, and I was like, quote unquote White House, but it was actually pink and green. I was like, oh my God. I was like, this is any kid that's like going to Howard. It's like, that's the one I want to be in, right? It's like immediate advertising. So I want people to understand that Unique Rice Lamb, I mean, your career has just did like stair steps in terms of the growth and the things, but it's been so focused. Your brand, your platform, the things that you've done, the things that your family has done too. Your dad especially, has been really impactful. But what do you see next? When do you expect to get your doctorate, the doctor?
If everything goes well, I should graduate next May.
Oh, that is so
I've
good.
completed all my regular coursework, so now I'm working on the dissertation. So I'm on. I mean, it could take a little longer, because we've been in a pandemic and things like that. But right now, everything's on track, so I think it could happen next May. That's my goal. That's what I'm shooting for.
That is so good. So after that, what do you see? Are you doing more consulting? Are you going to, what is the doctorate? I guess the goal for that, because everybody has a different one.
Yeah, I've learned to never say never, because sometimes different doors open. But one of the things that I really want to focus on a lot is environmental health and climate change, because I think that really impacts us. Even if you think about the heat wave that's going on right now, that's, global warming is a contributor to that, and that affects us disproportionately. Some of our elderly relatives and friends and neighbors are sometimes don't have, they're not living in places that are cool enough for them, and that places their health at risk. And also, if you look at redlining historically, that I was reading a study the other day, it's just like, it's amazing, that our neighborhoods have fewer parks and fewer trees and things like that. So it's some of that's by design. So, there's more cement and concrete in our communities. So our communities are hotter. They're actually physically hotter than some other communities, which is not healthy.
People talk about concrete nation and that kind of thing. That is, that has a lot to do with the health.
Yeah.
And also has to do with wealth. Health and poverty go together.
Yeah.
Health and wealth goes together. So if you have less health, you're typically going to be suffering with some other issues as well. So that is really important work. And were you getting into journalism? Did you know that it would take this turn?
Oh, about going into getting a PhD?
Yeah, like you start BET Weekend. It's like, oh, well, this is fun.
Well, I always wanted to start a magazine since I was in college. So that was always, and I had started, going to workshops and classes when I first moved to New York to do that. And I took some magazine courses at Ohio State and worked on some startups there too. So that was always a goal. I always loved magazines. I just, because of the training I had, I started off at newspapers, but I was freelancing at the same time for different magazines from college and afterwards. So that was always kind of a dream of mine. And from the time I was a little girl, I had thought about teaching. So that was in the back of my head, and then the health thing. So it kind of all came together now. But one of the things I loved about journalism is that you learn something new every day. So I was able to try a lot of different things. I've written about business, politics, sports, entertainment, health, just about anything, design, all sorts of different things. So that's kind of, that's what made it so interesting to me, because I could try different things, whether I was editing it or whether I was writing it or whether I was helping to conceive it, because I always have a lot of ideas and I've always been a curious person. So and sometimes I'm able to live vicariously through my students. Like, we do these huge election projects with them every year, actually, but then also especially during the presidential years. And we've taken them to national political conventions. We've sent them out of town to cover key races. So, so we'll have like a buzzing newsroom. I remember when Obama first ran, they said that we might have had the largest newsroom in the country on a collegiate or professional level, because we marshaled the entire department. All the students were cleared from their classes, and when they went home to vote, some of them were covering stories around the country in their hometowns. And plus we had them blanketed out throughout the DMV, the District of Columbia, Maryland, Virginia, as it's nicknamed. And there was a student who was in Chicago. So she was at Obama's victory speech, and she sent it to us, over her cell phone. We got it on the website.
Oh my God.
The students were so fierce that they had their story declaring Obama the winner ahead of some major media.
Get out of here.
Yeah, ahead of some major media.
Wow.
And that particular student who wrote that, she stayed with the story throughout. She continued to update that story till like 4 a.m. And that year she became the National Association of Black Journalists Student of the Year.
Yes.
But she was just, it was phenomenal. They were everywhere. They were at the White House. They were in the neighborhoods. They were in the precincts. They were all over the country. They were sending stuff at us. We were in that newsroom ourselves till like 2 a.m. And we were like, oh my gosh, we're like worn out. But it was exhilarating, watching them and doing that with them. And so, so we have a lot of fun when we work on different projects like that with them. It's a lot of, it kind of recharges our batteries and it kind of revs them up, and they can get a taste of what it's like. And, and they're on the mall, they're everywhere. They've covered the White House, they've covered stories in other countries, and it's a great experience for them. So they get real life experience. They're not doing exercises.
So anybody that really, NABJ.org, like you said, the your student of the year. So those that want to, NABJ.org, they have their convention coming up. Mm-hmm. If they want to go to that, it is a virtual. It's convention and career fair, but they have such, if you're not even interested in a career, they have such interesting things. This year is driven by purpose. So it's really kind of talking about united by mission, driven by purpose, navigating the digital world. It is in August, and they can go to nabj.org to really go there. But they talk about the storyteller's role in disrupting systemic racism in health. I'm sure you're probably be a part of that, or you probably.
I'm moderating 2 panels.
I was going to say that.
I'm moderating one on environmental justice, and I'm moderating another one kind of just dealing with maternal health.
Yes.
And I did one recently. They had an education and health program, and I did one that was looking at systemic racism in health.
I figured you would be there. You would be doing that. So that is something that makes.
And the current NABJ student of the year is one of my students, Arthur Cribbs.
Oh my
so
God.
we've had he's our 3rd one.
Wow. See, that is so cool. So it's August 18th through the 21st. It's virtual. They can go to nabj.org. They have to join at least as an associate member, and they can do that whether you're in the industry or not, and just to be a part of that. Just like NAPA, National Newspapers Publishers Association, they had theirs, and people can just go to it whether they were a member or not of the National Newspapers. Yeah,
like I said, my parents loved it. My mother and my father, they went. They used to. I didn't have to. I didn't know where they were doing. They would tell me things I didn't even know.
Wow.
They were just off on their own, attending sessions, meeting people.
See, that's it. That is it. So people can go to that as well. So Yanick, is there anything that you'd like to add? I just want to make sure that people go to fierceforblackwomen.com if they want to submit a story, if they have a pitch that they want, if they want to sponsor, if they want to really just, get out there and get known, go to fierceforblackwomen@gmail.com, send her an email. Yanick Rice Lamb, and then really just kind of, take a look at the website and see what kind of things that she is doing on that site as well. And, how you can fit in, possibly maybe give us some suggestions, or just at the very least hit at the end of the post and just share it out.
Yeah, definitely share it out. Follow us on our social media.
Yes.
And if you have environmental stories you want to share, I can be reached either through Fierce or at ylamb@howard.edu.
Okay, cool.
But that's something I continue to work on. And I'm on Twitter at YRLamb, YRLAMB.
Yes, because it was a little bit too long to do all of them. So I realized.
Yeah, so you can do that one, and you can connect through everything else through that one.
Cool. I love it. Well, just Yanick, thank you so much. This has been really fun. I am so excited for you.
Fun for me too. Thanks for having me.
Things that are happening, the things that you're doing. I guess I'll see you at NABJ at the convention, the virtual convention. I guess 2022 or 2023, whenever. Well, they'll have it every year, but sometimes they do it in combined with the
National Association of Hispanic Journalists.
Right. So that will be the 2022. But I'll definitely will see you online on that as well. Okay.
Definitely, I'll be looking for you.
All right.
Thank you so much for inviting me. This was fun. I enjoyed it.
Good. I really want people to understand the purpose about getting out there, getting known. Of course, you're always pitching the media, and they want to know how to get on the media, and whatever.
They need a Pam Perry in their lives also.
Well, thank you. But I also want them to know that you guys are real people, that this is like your life.
That's exactly, because sometimes people don't know how to approach the media, even the media in your hometown, wherever you live. Make sure you reach out to them too. There's NABJ chapters all over the country, but don't be afraid to reach out to people on TV or radio or the Black press or reporters and editors, because they want to hear from you, and they want to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly. They want to know if they're doing things well, and if they're not doing things well, you need to tell them. And then also do the Me Too thing. Though that was a nice story you did about that teacher, that nurse, that student, that whatever. Here's another person that you might consider.
Yes.
That they give them story ideas, Because if they don't know about it, they can't cover it. So let them know what's going on in your backyard.
I said they're not like Clark Kent running around in the street with a notepad looking for a story. Okay, they just don't
we have done that.
I said they can't be running around.
I've had to do that. I remember doing that in Michigan when I was, starting out. We'd have to fill all these pages, and you're going around literally looking for stories and talking to people and chatting them up and stuff. But but it helps to, that's an important source of information, or everyday people telling us, sending information to us or letting us know about what's going on. So you have to be our eyes and our ears. It's really, really important. It's more important than you think. And people do value your opinion too, because if you say something works or that it doesn't work, you're speaking for a lot of people who didn't bother to even say anything, and people realize that. So make sure you use your voice.
Wow, that is so good. I remember one of the things that I taught journalism for a semester at Detroit Renaissance High School, and one of the things that I had to have them do all the time was read the newspaper, and I gave them a quiz. You would have thought I told them that they had to take castor oil every day. I mean, they just really hated it. It was like, why do we have to read the newspaper? And so they read the newspaper, but then I said also to it, now I want you to go find news. So I had them during my period leave my classroom. Now I'm like a substitute for the whole year, right? So I leave my classroom so they can go find a story. The principal came back and she said, "What are you doing?" She said, "You got these high school students running up and down the hall looking for a story." I said, "That's really what a journalist would do." She says, "No, these are high school students. They are not looking for stories. They are out here playing in the hallway, and some of them are outside." I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry." I said, "I thought they were." She says, No, they're not looking for stories. You have." And I said, "But I wanted them to understand." She says, "Maybe if they were in college, but these are like 9th, 10th, and 11th graders. So you don't do that for them." And so some of them did come back with some stories, but some of them was like dirt. And I said, "You know what? I'm looking for a story." And so I had to explain to them what was news. I said, "That's why I had you reading the newspaper to understand what is news and what is gossip. I'm not looking for gossip. I'm looking for news." So they kind of understood. They're like, okay, gossip is not news. News really will inform and educate. Gossip is just a whole nother thing. So they kind of got the difference. I was like, whew. I did that for being a teacher. I did that for one semester. That was enough for me. I was like, okay, I'm done. It's a gift. So I had so much more respect for teachers after that. I was like, whew. And
I did too when I started. I didn't realize how much. I don't think I've ever worked harder in my life.
Oh my God.
I thought I worked hard as a journalist, but this is, I mean, plus you have to grade it, so this is really tough.
Yeah, that is.
It's very rewarding. I have to say this is probably my most fulfilling thing I've ever done. BT Weekend is probably the most fun.
Yeah, and see your students being like journalists of the, student journalists.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, one of the wonderful things is having people who have worked for me before, former students, when they're my editor and they're telling me what to do. And you can tell they're getting a kick out of it. And I'm like smiling on the phone because I'm getting a kick out of them telling me, "Now I want you to do this and do that and talk to this person and talk to that person." This is
the same thing you told
me. Giving me my deadline and all that kind of stuff. So, you can tell they're having fun doing that. But it's fun for me to hear them, do that as well.
Coming to their own.
Or they come back or they believe you. Just like the news quizzes you were telling me about. I kept telling one of my students that, some companies may give you a test or a news quiz or something. And he came back, he said, he had called me, he said he had an interview in New York and they gave him a news quiz. And he said, "I didn't believe you when you said that, but this particular job gave me a news quiz." And he said, "I thought I bombed it." And he said, I didn't do as well as I had done in the past, but he said, they said I had the highest score they ever saw.
Wow. That's only because
it wasn't perfect. It was a little lower. Pardon me.
It's only because you told them that might happen.
Yeah. A lot of places test you. I said they want to make sure you know your stuff. You have to be able to chit chat and all that kind of stuff. I said you're representing them. They want to make sure that you can represent them accurately and that you know what's going on in the world.
That is so cool. One of the coolest thing of an NABJ member that I'm just really proud of too is Jesele Hill.
Oh yeah,
that deal with Spotify. I was like, she's from Detroit, right? So not only is she NABJ, I was like, okay, you go, girl. She went to Michigan State, Murray White. She didn't go to my high school, but I'm just really proud of her of doing what she's doing. And it really,
yeah, we're all proud of her. The students always ask, we're still, we're working on getting her to come and stuff too. I've talked to her about it.
yeah,
But she is really, and she interviewed me, I remember years ago when I was working on the Althea Gibson biography, Born to Win. She interviewed for me that when she was working on the website.
okay.
And yeah, but she's very talented.
So you got to tell people about your books. I'm sorry, that's one other thing, because that'll be in the show notes. So tell us about your books. So you just
Born to Win, the authorized biography of Althea Gibson.
Okay.
I also worked on The Spirit of African Design, which is a coffee table book. I worked on Rise and Fly, Tall Tales, and Mostly True Rules of Bidwis. Which was fun.
That was probably
a tiny book, but it was a lot of fun.
That was probably popular during the pandemic. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, I should have probably kind of revved that up during that. But we may be doing something with the Philadelphia Museum, the Black Museum in Philadelphia, related to that next year. That was fun to work on too. And I got so many challenges. You know, I don't know if you play Bidwis or Spades, but
yeah, Spades.
So when people hear that you're writing a book or you're doing one, they really challenge you a lot. But this one couple we interviewed in Chicago, we were up playing with them till 5 a.m. till I couldn't see straight anymore.
Oh my God.
But fortunately, the woman I played with, I had never played with her before. We were on a winning streak. So people were like, "You writing a book, huh?"
Yeah.
That you wrote the book or something like that. So everybody wants to challenge you. But fortunately, so far I've had good streaks.
Good. That is it. So those are like cultural books, I guess you would say. Things.
Yeah, those are cultural books. There's some other things I've contributed chapters with, and I'm working on my first novel. I've actually completed the first draft. I'm kind of still working on that. And then some other projects and some other projects on the back burner. So
if you don't get inspired by listening to Yanick, like doing a novel now, it's a whole nother brain of.
I used to call it my subway novel because when I lived in New York, I used to write bits and pieces of it in the subway. And then the book club I'm in, you know, we discovered that everybody had some project on the back burner, whether it was a film script or a book or a memoir that was kind of just catching dust. So we started a writers group as part of our book club. And we started critiquing each other and giving each other encouragement or having working sessions. So by doing that with them, I tossed out the parts that didn't work. And I did some, I did some writers trips too, and participated in some programs around the country to help with that, to get feedback on it. So, but with working with them, I was able to finish the first draft. So it was really helpful because you have accountability partners.
Yeah, you do. That's having a cohort of helping you do that is really the main thing. My program, I just finished the Branding Accelerator. It's a cohort program. That's one of the main things, is keeping people accountable. And then my Ready, Set, Go Speak program, they have a forum where people are kind of like post their wins. So when you see someone post their wins, it's like, maybe I better post my win too, so it keeps everybody accountable, because information is useless if you don't have implementation. So
exactly. So we encourage everybody to do something with it, and also keeping you accountable in terms of taking care of yourself and not taking on too much. Because, we've talked about a lot of things. I'm not trying to do all the things I've done in the past. I'm really trying to streamline my life a little more, because, you can't, it's not sustainable. And they say multitasking is overrated. So I'm trying to, focus more. And also because since we have a health and wellness website, we have to practice what we preach as well. So
self-care is
self-care is really important, particularly now, because we're still, we're out of quarantine, but the pandemic is not over. So we still have to be very mindful of that. And just, a lot of people have been dealing with a lot of stress and a lot of illness and a lot of, grief and loss, and a lot of downsizing and,
weight gain,
loss, all kind of stuff. Yeah, weight gain, COVID, this and that. But so it's real. So we just have to make sure we take care of ourselves and take care of each other too, because there's people in our circles that we need to pay more attention to and make sure they're taking care of themselves. So that accountability thing we have to kind of pay it forward and all around us.
That is true. That is so true. Well, I appreciate the work that you're doing. Keep it up. And we will definitely be show notes, all the books that you've done, the websites, the things that you're doing, and applauding you by next May being Dr. Yanick. How would you like to be addressed? Is it Dr. Rice Lamb, Dr. Yanick? Well, how are we going to?
I'm open. I'm not, it doesn't, because funny thing is people already call me doctor because they err on the side of caution, because some people, get caught up in it. And so people have been calling, and I keep saying, thank you, but I'm not a doctor yet. So I said, I'm speaking it into being. So okay. I may go by Rice Lamb instead of Lamb in honor of my father.
That's
William cool. Rice. And I didn't realize it was so, he told me he was really happy that I'd kept the Rice in my name. So I'm his oldest child. So he has one son, but I'm the oldest. So he was really happy. But since I write a lot, so that's one reason he was happy that I kept the Rice in my name. So I was thinking about doing that now.
That is so cool. Well, make sure you get the domain name.
I have the domain name.
Okay, good. There you go.
Yeah, have the domain name. Cool. And I tell students that too. I said, invest in yourself. Buy your name.
Buyyourname.com. Go to GoDaddy and get it. I teach that a lot too. That's like the first lesson in Ready, Set, Go, Speak. Getyourname.com. I said, what about your company? Get your company, but getyourname.com.
Yeah, get your name. I had .com, .net, .info, .edu, .org. I had Yanick, Rice Lamb, everything.
.tv. That's right. That's everything. That is so true. It's only $10. So
yeah, it wasn't that much. So I sat on it for a long time before I even used it. So
cool. All right. Well, I'm gonna let Karen Taylor Bass know that we connected. And I don't know what she's doing, but she's doing a lot of self-care things. She's a yoga.
Yes, she is.
Yes. So that is so cool. So I'm so proud of how everything has evolved and how we are still always evolving. And thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Thanks for your support, because you helped make it happen too.
Cool. All right, guys. We will talk to you next time.
You've been listening to the Get Out There and Get Known podcast, brought to you by PamPerryPR.com, where you'll get insider tips on how to build your platform, pitch the media, and promote yourself with confidence. Head over to PamPerryPR.com and get the exclusive video training on the 7 must-have marketing materials you need before you pitch in order to be considered in media places or superstar stages. PamPerryPR.com, where you help you shine like a superstar.